What's the film about thematically?
To me, the strongest is the father-son theme. It's about how the pain that men struggle with to express love for each other and for themselves. It's finding the love of themselves, whether they're worthy of love anymore after committing crimes or after pushing people away.
I thought that the film had a very strong, universal yet bittersweet message that sometimes in life you have to recognise your limits and rejoice in what you have rather than mourn over what you don't have.
That's very well put, Jim. I mean, I think that it illustrates what you just said is even more economically stated with the Logline, which is all that you seek is seeking you, which I had always thought was pertained to the law of spiritual attraction. I thought it was about God looking at you and you looking at God, saying, well, God within us. But actually, having made it and watched it with people now, it seems to me that it's about love and seeing an eagle up there that he felt like he was responsible for rehabilitating, proved to him that he was capable of love that wasn't going to manifest in some sort of reciprocal kind of action. There wasn't something to get out of that. There was something to give. There was something to.
Just tell us a bit about your relationship with that character, how you found him, what the differences are, what the similarities are.
There's plenty of similarities. I guess having a Middle Eastern father gave me a territory. I was in the ballpark, but I think what I needed to shed was an Arabic take on him. He's very Persian and Australian Persian, and so that was an initial difference that I struck. I always saw him as a man who had to shed his own culture to survive where he was, and so I think I approached most of the moments that he does with a sense of confusion about and apprehension about and a defensiveness that I guess we both encountered people like that when we visited places like this. But the obsessive compulsive, the hygiene freak that he was, the poet, the animal lover, the high moral ground that he took around the rest of the prisoners, they were all consistent with a man who, to me, had rejected a strong fundamentalist or Islamic sort of family and had to kind of find his own inner kind of the generator of his own spiritual kind of something inside him that would sustain him through the pain of moving away from everyone.
To your very good work in this film and in your stellar performance in East West 101, are you deliberately using your ethnicity to promote an agenda?
I've never had an agenda to promote. I guess I've always found that my background has offered a slight advantage to playing migrants, and I've never sort of I never found that. I never sort of pushed the opportunities away, and so because I've played Irish and Russian and American, and I played different nationalities. It seems to me like as the world shrinks, the number of protagonists that are caught between two worlds is growing, and I've been fortunate to play some of them, and I think that maybe through characters like that we glean a little bit of, I guess we take two bites of the cherry maybe, and so And while it's great to entertain people, it's great to also sort of bring awareness to a different perspective, and that's always been because it's hard enough to make stuff, But then when there's maybe when there's a message or something for an audience to take away, then you can't help but be attracted to things like that.
In a post 9/11 culture,
yeah,
to see a series like East West 101, which basically puts the issues of difference and of cross-cultural relationships in your face, and in healing, to say this is an Iranian man, here's the central character of the film, and to actually get an audience to sympathise with them, seems to promote the whole notion of cross-cultural understanding in a post 9/11 world.
It's a great question, Jim, because it was Craig's motivation, and 9/11 is nearly 15 years ago now, 14 years ago. So East West, while that took place maybe 5 years after 9/11, when I read the script, I felt like that was very heavy-handed, and in conversation with Craig, we pulled back a lot of that because it seemed to me that the story, for it to be universal, needed to engage people in a one-on-one way, as opposed to representing and that's what actually attracted me, was the idea of playing a Middle Eastern man or someone from that region who wasn't Islamic, and whose character didn't revolve around a belief in one thing or another. In fact, this guy would have walked away from all of that, and that appealed to me because I think that the step that you take after something like East West, where Islam and that was so intrinsic, was so pivotal to that character, and the idea of demystifying that, and then addressing the big question, which is what is the identity of Australian Islam? Where do we move forward from that? It seems to me that the next question is, well, what do we say about Jewish or Christians or Buddhists who live in the Middle East? Because there's certainly plenty of, we enjoy a racially and religiously intolerant environment, and they exist all over the world, but for us to portray people from any part of the world as being exclusively one religion or another is another kind of misleading thing, and that's what appealed to me about Viktor, which was that we were going to see a Middle Eastern man, and we weren't going to hear him say anything religious. We weren't going to hear him or watch him pray. We weren't going to do these things that we expect from a man of Middle Eastern persuasion.
So in earlier versions of the screenplay, that was emphasised a lot more.
He was confined a prayer mat at one stage, and a Quran, and do all that stuff. And I said to Craig, I just don't think that anyone's going to care about that. I don't think that that's going to be important to our story. There were different opinions definitely floating around about that, and there were different. But to me, part of creating Viktor was his backstory. A big part of it, and to me, Viktor had left to bring his culture with him. Viktor seemed to me a guy who had left to embrace a culture when he came here, and then failing to do that, or finding himself in trouble. At one stage, he may have kind of gravitated toward his country's community here, but I don't think he's ever been a religious person, and it was important that, I think, for a character to be universal, we see him without we don't invite discrimination with that sort of thing, and that's immediately what a Western audience, what you're inviting a Western audience to do when you see someone do that.
So what did Don bring to it? Don, like you want with any actor, you want them to take ownership. It's very important, actually. You know, if you want good for me, this is just for me because everyone else is different. Everyone's different, you know. There's a logic to an actor taking ownership of the role and being comfortable with the role. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is you'll just argue about stuff. So what, you know? Don, in particular, had some strong ideas of how he should look. That was fabulous. I thought he looked like a Mexican bandit, but I lost that battle, and I'm very glad I did because I think it's terrific. You know, he had to be believable as 50 plus or thereabouts. So that was the first hurdle Don had to deal with, and so he spent a lot of time thinking about how he was going to look and how we would play that. Then there's the physical reality to that, which I think he does really well, and really when he's walking down that path with the little girl at the end, you can really see the grandpa in it, you know. I like that.
He was very specific about the religious aspect to the character that was there originally,
Sufi, yeah.
And he wanted that out of the character. What happened there?
I don't know. There's one scene where he pulled the Quran out of a box, and there's an inscription in it from his father that we dropped. And that's this particular scene, and he was also going to get his prayer mat out. But we always thought that was a bit over. But at the same time, you like to go into an edit with more than you think you might need because you never know. But that was one we were happy to let go of. I don't see it as a religious film at all. You know, as long as we never made the film about any of that, I was happy with whichever direction it took, as long as he's believable. So you just work through that, and as I say, because it's not the thrust of it, it was fine.